So when I think of the upper class in Australia, I think of someone who owns their own home, perhaps they drive a luxury car and goes on 1 or 2 international holidays with their family a year. But surprisingly, you actually don't need as much net worth as you might think to be considered as upper class. So in today's video, we're going to break down all the classes within Australia, talk about how much net worth you need to have, how much income you need to be making, and some other key characteristics based on data that has been released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics and a few other research papers as well. So the ABS actually gives us data on the quintiles of net worth. So what that essentially means is quintiles are separated into every 20% of the population. So we have data on the bottom 20, the 20th to 40th percentiles, and the 40th to 60th percentiles, and so on. So let's first start with the lowest 20th percentile, otherwise known as the lower middle class. So the average net worth in this quintile is $35,100, and the gross disposable income is $25,012. Now, $35,000 in net worth doesn't just mean that you have $35,000 in your savings account. Net worth is actually the sum of everything that you own minus everything that you owe or your liabilities. For example, if you had $5,000 in your savings account, perhaps $10,000 in your superannuation, and you own a car that was worth $5,000, your total assets in this case would be worth $20,000. And in terms of your liabilities, you might have a $55,000 HECS debt, a $3,000 car loan. This means your total liabilities would add up to $58,000. So your total net worth in this case would be $20,000 minus $58,000, resulting in you having a negative net worth of $38,000. Now, in my opinion, net worth is a pretty good indicator of wealth, because whilst you can be earning $1 million, if you also spend $1 million, then you really don't have much to show for in terms of assets. So in a way, net worth also accounts for your spending behavior, discipline, and financial habits. So that's why I think it's a pretty good indicator of how wealthy someone is. Another key characteristic of this group is they actually aren't saving any money at all. In fact, on average, they're going backwards $5,769. The poverty line in Australia is $489 a week for singles, or $1,027 a week for couples with children. So people in this demographic are essentially living below the poverty line. These people are more than likely living paycheck to paycheck and are probably having a hard time making ends meet, especially in the current cost of living crisis. As a matter of fact, if they're in a vicious cycle of debt, then they're going to have a really hard time trying to climb out of this group. Now, people within this group are going to be people working in unskilled jobs, but we also need to be mindful of the fact that there are going to be a large number of people in this quintile that are university students or young adults that also fall within this bracket. Which kind of leads me to a quick disclaimer about this video. The ABS defines a household as one or more persons where at least one person is 15 years of age, residing in the same private dwelling. The ABS doesn't seek to differentiate between multi-household dwellings or single household dwellings, meaning we could be comparing a household where there's a share house between 2 university mates versus a family of 2 working adults with a child. So it's obviously not the most accurate representation. Ideally, we'd have this all broken down by specific age groups and have an apple-to-apple comparison between households. So we kind of just have to work with the data that we have. And if the ABS thinks that this data is worth publishing, then I wanted to share that with you guys. Moving on to the next group, which is the 20th to 40th percentile, or otherwise known as the lower middle class. They have an average net worth of $252,600, whilst having an average disposable income of $56,212. This also allows this group to have some household savings, with gross household savings of $12,378. We can see a pretty significant jump from the lower class to the lower middle class in terms of net worth, and this is largely going to be attributed to property. Within this group, there are going to be some households who have been able to save up and purchase their own homes, and as a result would have seen a spike in their overall net worth. What this also tells us is that the lower middle class is starting to have more discretionary income where they're able to choose how they're actually spending their money. And if these people don't have the correct discipline or the financial habits, then this is where they could get trapped in the lower middle class. And perhaps you know someone like this. They make a pretty decent income, nothing lavish, but they're spending a bit too much of their discretionary income on their wants, such as paying for car repayments or going shopping for new clothes. To move up into the next group, we really need to be investing for our future selves, building better financial habits, and hopefully looking to increase our income by building our skills. The next cohort is going to be the middle class, and this is where you're right in the middle of the distribution. The net worth of this group is $588,400, whilst the gross disposable income is now $93,132, whilst gross household savings is $20,874. Households in this cohort have generally been able to build their wealth either via property or by the share market. Now, if you're someone who's earning higher than the gross household income of the middle class, so let's say, for example, you're a 30-year-old earning $150,000 a year, but you don't have a net worth that's anywhere near $600,000, don't be disheartened because it's more than likely just due to the fact that you haven't been in the market long enough. Research done by McCrindle found that millennials between the age of 24 to 34 were earning on average $128,180, which is above the average household income of those considered to be middle class, but only had a net worth of $353,800. On the other hand, younger Gen Xers who were between the age of 35 to 44 were earning on average $147,524, but had a net worth of over $692,000. So as long as you stay the course and let the power of compounding take over, you'll eventually see your net worth number climb. Moving up into the 80th percentile, which is otherwise known as the upper middle class, where the net worth figure finally crosses the $1 million mark at just around $1,067,200, with a gross household income of $143,156 and gross household savings of $36,638. If you've been paying attention to the numbers, you would have noticed that the net worth has been aggressively climbing in between quintiles, whilst the household income and household savings hasn't nearly been increasing as much. Now, this is just my hypothesis, but I would assume that a large proportion of those in the upper middle class would consist of baby boomers and late Gen Xers who have been able to get in the property market early and have been able to ride that property wave. And so if we were to take all of the older folk out of this cohort, what does the upper middle class really look like? Well, in terms of their jobs, I would think that these are typically defined by white-collar professionals with some form of advanced degree, like doctors, engineers, lawyers, or accountants. These people generally will have quite different values to those compared in the lower class. There's going to be a strong emphasis on education, learning, and career progression, and most of these people will generally be homeowners. And they also probably have a few different types of assets that they invest into that helps them generate wealth. And finally, we move into the top 20% or the upper class. They have an average net worth of $3,267,100 and a household income of $288,028, whilst gross household savings increases to $111,274. Now, whilst a higher income is usually correlated to net worth, it's not always the sole determining factor. Oftentimes, what we see with the upper class is that there is a large amount of money that they've generated through equity in their own home, money saved in their superannuation, as well as different types of stocks and investments, as you can see in this graph that shows the composition of wealth by asset type in 2018. This illustrates that the path to wealth is rarely just to do with income, and oftentimes largely correlated to other financial activities as well. And I would argue that a more important mindset or discipline to have is to have a high savings rate. Now, for the upper class, the gross savings as a percentage of their household income is sitting around 40%. And if we look back at each class, we see that as we move down each class, the savings rate has gone down as well. So in my opinion, one of the defining characteristics of the upper class is that they're really good at saving, and more often than not, they're then directing those savings to be invested into assets that then in turn generate them wealth. Now, whilst it definitely does help to have a high income, I definitely don't believe that you need to be earning like $200,000 to eventually become upper class. You can actually become quite wealthy as long as you continue to save and have a long enough time horizon to invest your money. We've seen it and heard about it time and time again, that it's not really about how much money you make, but about how much money you save and then invest. There was even a famous story several years back where there was a janitor in the United States who amassed a fortune of over $8 million in net worth by the time he was 92 years old. He lived quite frugally and only really spent money when he had to. And then he took all the savings from his janitor job and then invested that into blue chip stocks. So I hope that this video has shed some light on the different classes within Australia. If you feel comfortable, let me know what class you belong in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel for more content like this in the future. And I'm also going to leave a relevant video where I talk about how much superannuation you should ideally have by age, and I'm going to leave that up right here. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video.